So have the Springboks done anything wrong after their victory against the All Blacks at Twickenham last Friday? Been a little bit of fallout of people criticising them, in particular for the 7-1 bench split. I was at the game and I didn't come away thinking there was going to be any sort of controversy or fallout from it, but there has been, so I'm going to speak about that in this video, in particular that bench split and how I don't think there's any issues here anyway, but we'll get into it. So make sure you drop a comment down below and make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel as well. But let's get into it. So I know most of you will be pretty across this anyway, but the Springboks against the All Blacks, they had 7 forwards and 1 back on the bench. And as a result of that, there's been a little bit of a backlash. I must admit, not a huge amount of backlash, I don't think. I think most fans, most pundits, most people that watched the game were kind of just amused by it, really, more than anything. But it was Matt Williams, the former Scotland coach, speaking on the Off the Ball podcast, I believe, basically saying that the Springboks were abusing the bench, that having 7 forwards coming off the bench was something that shouldn't be allowed, essentially not safe, or abusing the system that is there. He was suggesting that it should be compulsory for it to be 3 backs and 5 forwards, which is, I suppose, the traditional split. We see a lot of teams these days doing the 6-2 split, and then it was kind of one on from that, the 7-1 split that the Springboks used against the All Blacks. So first of all, a couple of things to go through here. As I say, I think this is absolute nonsense. There was absolutely nothing wrong with what the Springboks did. However, it maybe does open up a conversation about the role of the substitute in rugby, but that's removed from the Springboks. That's a issue across the game rather than it being about a specific team. So I will come on to that. First of all, you've got to remember, originally it was a 6-2 bench split. Villy LaRue pulled up injured late on, so they brought in a forward to replace him. So that's why they ended up having 7 forwards on the bench. Jacques Nienaber was asked about it afterwards, and I got the impression it's not really something we're going to be seeing too regularly, not something that they're going to be doing at the World Cup, I wouldn't have thought, because it leaves you so exposed. I mean, that could have easily backfired for the Springboks against the All Blacks. We've only got 1 back replacement. If they had a couple of injuries in that back line, all of a sudden, things are being pretty awkward there of how you have to reshuffle that back line, and could be quite a big disadvantage, and may have ended up being a positive for the All Blacks. As it was, they got lucky. The 7 forwards came on. They didn't have any issues in their back line, and the forwards had a massive impact when they all came on at the same time, which I must admit was quite an entertaining spectacle at Twickenham when you see the 7 forwards pretty early in the second half, basically being able to replace your whole pack, and the dominance that they continue to have in the forwards and in the pack and all that sort of thing. So I think it comes with its own risks. They took those risks, and it ultimately paid off. And I don't think we're going to be seeing it on a regular basis. I think the suggestion that they were abusing the system or this needs some specific law to be able to stop this from happening again is really wide of the mark, in my view. But it does open perhaps a slight conversation about the role of the replacement in rugby. And as I say, this isn't about the Springboks. This is across the game, and the issues in the game in terms of the speed, the power, the pace, the toll that is put on the players, and about player safety. And I think a maybe possibly viable option, if we are concerned about those elements, is reducing the number of replacements. If you think about a team at the moment, 15 starters, you then got 8 players coming off the bench, you're able to replace just over half of your team. When we talk about the workload on players and the toll that they have to go through, are there too many replacements in rugby at the moment? Would it be better to, I think I've seen it said elsewhere, that you really limit the subs, or it can only be a substitution if it's for an injury. Now, there are unintended consequences to all these sorts of conversations of what negatives might come from that, but I think it's probably worth a discussion if we are talking about player safety and brain injuries and all that sort of thing, because I think the starting 15, particularly in the forwards, would have to adapt their workload. If you're a front row forward now, you know that you probably only have to get through 60 minutes, maybe 65. Most of the time, the front row would have been replaced by them, and a lot of the other forwards, or a couple of other forwards in the team, would have been replaced by that point as well. Would forwards have to maybe lose a little bit of weight, become more agile slightly, and that might help with the physicality, with all that kind of dangerous side of the game? Maybe. I obviously don't have all the answers. I don't know what the science would back it up, but I think it's probably a conversation that's worth entertaining. So let me know in the comment section down below. Do you think there's anything worthwhile of going down that avenue? But as I say, there are always unintended consequences with these things, so who knows? But I don't know, off the back of the whole, they were abusing the bench system, it was just kind of a door that was left ajar that I thought was maybe worth mentioning in this video. One final thing I want to mention as well is that there has been quite a lot of, not quite a lot, there's been elements of backlash to that Springbok win And I don't really get why. I was watching the breakdown, the New Zealand, Sky in New Zealand, their weekly rugby show, which is a really good show, by the way. I find it really useful for kind of keeping a pulse on the view of the All Blacks and the view of things in New Zealand. But they had a very negative reaction to the game at Twickenham. I don't know, probably motivated, at least in small part, by the fact that it was such a drubbing for the All Blacks. But they were mentioning that the length of the game and that it was too long and the bunker system not working and taking time out of the game, etc., etc. I have to say, having been there in the stands, I didn't have that impression at all. I was not there thinking, "Core, this is dragging." I was pretty absorbed in the contest overall. And I actually think the bunker system is probably quite a good thing to have come in. And I think it will, overall, will reduce the time we spend with the referee and the two assistants staring up at the screen and chatting to the TMO and people in stadium not being able to know what's going on, and that kind of taking off minutes off the clock. So overall, I don't have an issue with the bunker system. I didn't have that feeling from the game. Maybe it's something that we'll have to keep an eye on at the World Cup, but I think the bunker system will probably help speed up the game, I would have thought, then slow it down in the way that TMO interjections often can. So that was just my kind of few thoughts on the game, a little bit of fallout from it. I'm sure many Springbok fans will have their say in the comment section, but the idea that they were abusing the bench system, absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense in my view, but you can let me know in the comment section down below. And do let me know as well, what do you make of the replacements and the conversation around replacements? Do we need to look at that in the game of where rugby is professionally at the moment? Maybe, I think, but you can let me know. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel as well, and I'll see you in the next one.